I am okay. So those are going. The last thing I need to do is just read through our hearing script and we'll get started. So this is the September 14th, 2022 session of the Zoning Hearing Examiner docket. My name is David Sturkey. I'm the Zoning Hearing Examiner for the City of Cincinnati, and I'll preside over this hearing. The case before us today is case number ZH20220136. The purpose of this hearing is to allow applicants and opposing parties to testify and to offer and refute evidence and testimony. This hearing will follow the rules found in the zoning code and the supplemental rules of the Zoning Hearing Examiner. All testimony and evidence that an applicant or any opposing party wishes to offer must be presented at this hearing. The hearing will proceed as follows. The applicant's attorney, or the applicant's agent will first present the applicant's case. The public will then have an opportunity to speak after the applicant has presented his case. If the applicant is represented by an attorney, the applicant's attorney may cross-examine any person who has testified at the hearing. If a party of record is represented by an attorney, the attorney for the party of record may present witnesses after the applicant has presented its case and may cross-examine any person who has testified at the hearing. In the event that any party testifies or offers argument in opposition to this application, the applicant will have an opportunity to rebut that testimony and or argument. After the applicant has been given an opportunity to rebut any testimony and or argument offered in opposition, and the attorney for a party of record will have an opportunity to make a closing statement. Finally, the applicant will have an opportunity to make a closing statement. For our purposes here today, I'm going to go, we'll start with the team in the KMK law. Mr. Burke, as you know, I'm pretty liberal about how you want to orient your presentation. You can direct examine witnesses. You can just let witnesses testify on their own. You can make any opening remarks if you would like. Really, whatever you need to do to make sure that I have a good picture of what this project is and why you think I should grant this approval. I will then go over to Mr. Lang and give Mr. Lang an opportunity to provide any testimony that he would like. I'll give our zoning administrator, Emily Ahaus, an opportunity to provide any comments in addition to her staff report. I'll then come back to you, Mr. Burke. If you'd like to ask Mr. Lang any questions, I'll allow you to do that. Or if you'd like to respond or rebut anything that Mr. Lang says, you can do that as well. And then make any closing statements. And then I may have some questions along the way. After all presentations have been made, I will close the hearing. Decisions may be expected within 2 weeks. I may limit or exclude any testimony that I deem irrelevant or outside the scope of the application being considered. I may interrupt any speaker to ask questions or to make any comments. I may also refuse to consider hearsay testimony. That's generally evidence you want to introduce that consists of statements made by someone who's not present at this hearing, and that is discretionary. In the event of any technical difficulties with the Zoom technology, I'll do my best to troubleshoot those on the fly, but to the extent there's some defect that prevents us from meaningfully going forward with this hearing, I may continue or postpone the hearing at my discretion. Okay, last thing I need to do is just swear in all of our witnesses. So if you intend on providing any testimony here today, making any comments, asking any questions, really doing anything other than just strictly observing the hearing today, then you need to be sworn in if you are not an attorney. So if that's you, if you could make sure that you're off mute. I need everyone to raise their right hand and to answer out loud. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
My testimony will be the truth and the whole truth.
Okay, great. All right. Looks like everyone's sworn except for our attorneys here. All right, Mr. Burke, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Sturkey. Happy to proceed. I would simply begin by summarizing. I don't know whether you've had the opportunity to go down onto Southside and see that street. It's one of the most industrial, unique streets that I'm aware of in the city of Cincinnati. And for Hilltop's purposes, there's nothing else like it, where it has both river access for the barge transportation of the aggregates that they use right now on the downtown site. It's zoned properly for their purposes. The only real zoning change that it needs, other than some relatively minor variances, is the conditional use to approve the outdoor storage of aggregates. You're going to hear testimony from Kevin Sheehan in just a moment, but one of the things he's going to tell you is that after a long and deliberative process, this was the only available site that fits the need in the city of Cincinnati. And with that, let me call Kevin as perhaps our only witness. The other witnesses who have been sworn are here in the event you have questions or there are issues that may come up that we need to present in reply. Mr. Sheehan, would you please, for the record, state your name and your position with Hilltop?
I am Kevin Sheehan. I am president of Hilltop Basic Resources.
And can you briefly describe what you have done to study this Southside Avenue site?
Yes, we've, as Tim mentioned, we've looked at a number of different sites over the years, going back to 2017 when we initiated conversations with Hamilton County regarding the possible relocation of our concrete central riverfront operations. This site provides the critical factors that we need in our business, and those are river access, close to the urban core, has good access to major transportation networks, is in an industrial area, and it has the zoning that we need to operate on the site. As I said, many sites have been looked at over the years. This is the one that we've identified within the city of Cincinnati that meets all of the criteria we need to operate and continue the operation we have on the central riverfront.
And have you had the opportunity to review the staff report in this matter?
Yes, I have reviewed the staff report.
And putting aside for the moment the issue of the two conditions that are recommended by staff, and we'll come back to those, are you satisfied that the statements contained in the staff report are true and accurate?
I am satisfied that the statements contained in the staff report are true and accurate.
And do you adopt the staff report as a portion of your testimony here, which you are giving under oath?
Yes, I do adopt it.
You've also had the opportunity, I believe, to review the application that was filed on behalf of Hilltop, specifically the summary of why the application for zoning relief should be granted.
Yes, I have.
And are the statements contained in that document true and accurate?
Yes, the statements contained in the application for zoning relief, a statement of why the application for zoning relief should be granted are true and accurate.
And do you adopt the statements contained therein as part of your testimony here today?
I do adopt those statements.
Mr. Sheehan, can you briefly describe Hilltop's background and what it seeks to accomplish on the Southside site?
Yes. Let me just briefly mention Hilltop is a third generation family owned business founded in Cincinnati in 1941. We supply ready mix concrete and sand, gravel, and limestone primarily to the construction industry through 3 mines, 3 river distribution terminals, and 3 ready mix concrete plants. The largest of these 3 plants is located on the central riverfront at 511 West Water Street, currently just southwest of Paycor, formerly Paul Brown Stadium, a site to which we were relocated in 1967 to make room for Riverfront Stadium. In 2017, we were approached by Hamilton County about the possible purchase of that site to allow riverfront development plans surrounding then Paul Brown Stadium to proceed. At that time, we explained to Hamilton County that the most important issue for Hilltop was the acquisition, permitting, and development of a suitable relocation site. In February 2020, Hilltop entered into an agreement with Hamilton County to sell that central riverfront site. At that time, we sold the westernmost 8 acres of the site, which is now where the Bengals interim indoor practice facility is being constructed. The remainder of the site will be transferred to Hamilton County once a suitable relocation site has been secured, developed, and ready for occupancy and operation. As I said earlier, various sites have been considered since 2017 discussions began, and for a myriad of reasons, and none of those sites checked out or met all the boxes that we need for operation. Specifically, as I said, we need to be on the river near the core market, good access to transportation networks, also in an industrial area with proper zoning that's compatible with neighboring property uses. Since placing the Southside site property under contract, we began outreach to the Riverside and Sedamsville community groups, presenting our plans at their respective monthly meetings in April of 2021, conducting a plant tour in May of 2021, and most recently last night presenting at the Riverside Civic and Welfare Club meeting. Site plans we're discussing today are for a modern state-of-the-art concrete mixing plant with a horizontal reversible mixing technology. This plant will be fully enclosed, which will help control dust, and will have the capacity to produce concrete in the quantities and to the specifications demanded by our customers in the large commercial industrial market that we serve. The major ingredients to concrete are sand, gravel, or limestone, and cement and water. We can also put various additives in. The reason I bring that up now is we will be bringing the aggregates, the sand, gravel, and limestone that we will be using in the ready mix concrete production process from two mines we own down the Ohio River. Barges carry the material containing about 1,600 tons, or the equivalent of 80 trucks of material per single barge. These barges will be unloaded through a floating unloading conveying system with an excavator, and then put into a hopper and conveyed directly into stockpiles, where they will be stored until such time as they are used in the manufacturing process. The stockpiles themselves will be located just on the south side of Southside Avenue. This site also happens to be adjacent to one of our current cement suppliers, Wholesome, and that by itself will give us the opportunity to reduce the number of tanker truck trips delivering cement to our production process. Our move to this site will result in the retention of 50 good-paying jobs within the city of Cincinnati.
Kevin, let me ask you just a couple of other questions. First of all, Valley Asphalt is currently located adjacent to your operation downtown. Whose property is that on?
We own the property that and lease the property to Valley Asphalt for the production of asphalt in their operations.
And what's the expectation as to what's going to happen with that piece of property?
That piece of property will be sold to the county when Valley Asphalt vacates the premises and demolishes the structures on it.
And just to be clear, as you explained to the Riverside Community Council last night, when we were there a year ago in the spring, there was a possibility of Valley coming to this site with you. That's
Correct.
Not the case today, is it?
That's correct. It's our understanding that Valley has secured another site. They're in the process of getting that permitted. And unlike our original plans, we do not have any plans for them to be located on this site as part of our future operation.
And let me ask you just quickly about another couple of things. If you would, please look at Exhibit 7, which is part of our application. Mr. Sturkey, I hope you have the opportunity to take a look at these, because it really demonstrates why this is a very unique street. But can you describe what Exhibit 7 shows? And there are a series there.
It shows basically tankers and tanks of material and tankers as well as conveyors over the roadway. In addition, I believe that is the Wholesome terminal up in the middle part of the page, a cement storage silo located just in the middle of the picture.
And there are a total of currently of 8 conveyors that go over Southside, are there not?
That's correct.
And there are photos here of all of them.
Yes.
Those are existing conveyors on Southside right now.
Yes,
Yes.
they are. And that explains, by the way, why it's necessary. And Emily, this is also specified in the staff report, and Emily Ahaus may comment on it, but it explains why a front yard setback is necessary because the conveyor, the single conveyor over Southside, which we've yet to have approval for, and we know we've got to go through a different process for that, but we will need a setback variance for that on both sides of the street. But it's consistent with what exists at 8 other locations on Southside Avenue. And I don't think there is another street in the city of Cincinnati like this at all. I have no other questions for Mr. Sheehan at this point. I would like the opportunity to bring him back in reply should that become necessary.
Sure.
And oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Kevin just reminded me that I left off the questions about the 2 proposed conditions. And there are 2 conditions recommended by staff. One, which we've discussed at some length with Ms. Ahaus. The first condition would be prior to final zoning approval for the use, the applicant will demonstrate compliance with 141919 and will provide evidence of any required OEPA permits. Kevin, if prior to final zoning approval is understood to mean that prior to the issuance of an occupancy permit and prior to the initiation of any operations at the site, is that condition acceptable to Hilltop?
Yes, this condition is acceptable. Hilltop will, prior to the occupancy of and the initiation of operations at the site, have all Ohio EPA permits, as we have always done at our Central Riverfront site and our other locations.
And the second condition is with regard to a recommendation for modest landscaping along Southside Avenue. Can you describe to the hearing examiner what you are contemplating for landscaping on Southside Avenue?
Yes, once we've determined the design and the location of the identification sign, which will conform to the sign regulations of the zoning code, we will design a landscape plan around the sign and submit it to the city staff for approval.
And another thing unique about Southside is there is virtually no landscaping on Southside. I've found one other landscape bed, and a photo of that is included in Exhibit 9 of our application. And that's the only other thing that I would call landscaping that exists anyplace on Southside Avenue. When I took this picture, there were 4 evergreens in that landscape bed. 2 of them were dead. Those have now been removed when I looked at that site last night. Hilltop does do some landscaping on its current site. It's not much because of what the operation is, but they take care of what they do. I have no other questions for.
Well, that landscaping, you said that will be on the south side or on the south side of Southside?
Yeah.
Probably
On both sides.
on the north side, because we anticipate most of the traffic will be entering the site on the north side of the property.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I'm sorry, it gets confusing when you're trying to describe which side of Southside something is going on. Those are all of the witnesses we think we need to call at this point.
Okay. Great. Well, let's hear from the other witnesses. I may have some questions after we hear from them. So I'll go to Mr. Lang. Mr. Lang, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see everybody again. I'd like to say first off that Hillside and Kevin Sheehan in particular have been extremely cooperative for a year and a half ago, and met with them again last night, as Kevin said. The community of Riverside has expressed to the city on a number of occasions our concerns with Hilltop's move to this location. Excuse me. Our concerns are mainly with dust control and with traffic out on River Road. River Road's extremely congested right now with trucks, and they're proposing 100 new.
Is that freezing up for everyone?
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Lang, I'm sorry. We missed the last 10 seconds of your testimony there. It froze up a little bit. Could you restate that? I
was talking about the additional truck traffic. Hilltop has said that they would have 100 trucks per day. going in and out of their plan, primarily going east on the road, but the intersections at Southside and River Road is a problem area to begin with. That's one of our concerns. I don't know if you heard this, but dust control, I think, is probably our major issue. I'd like to say that originally our biggest issue was the odors coming from the asphalt plant, and the asphalt plant not being a part of this project now is a big plus. But those are, I think, our big problems. The problem, another issue that's come up is the views that will be blocked by some of the residential areas up on the hillsides around this plant. Their buildings scheduled to be about 100 feet tall, with their stockpiles being some 35 feet tall. So the concern is that'll be block the river views of the Ohio River. So all that being said, we had a vote last night after Hilltop left, and we voted not to support the project in Riverside. I would say that it was not a unanimous vote, but the majority voted against the project.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Lang?
No, I think that's it.
So, like, in terms of views, how many residences do you think will be impacted by the?
In Riverside itself, probably about a dozen. There's probably about a dozen, I'm guessing at the number of houses that sit above, probably about 800 feet away, that would be directly impacted. There are probably some higher houses up in the hillside. Sedamsville in particular what has views down into this area, and again, I don't have a handle on how many houses would be impacted there, but there could be quite a few. So
Okay.
I don't know if that answers all your question.
It does. Thanks, Mr. Lang. And appreciate you being here and your input from the community council there. Okay, I think we'll go to Ms. Ahouse, and then I'll give Mr. Burke, I'll give you a chance to respond to that. Or did you want to ask him some questions?
A couple of quick questions for
Sure.
Mr. Lang, specifically about views, which came up essentially at the end of the meeting last night. Mr. Lang, isn't it true that all along Southside, in many places, there are storage tanks and other buildings that are already blocking views?
That's true. And right next door, the Wholesome Concrete building, or the towers there are going to be much higher than Hilltop. So yes, there are, but it's just adding to it. I think the biggest issue was not so much the building as it was the piles of gravel that they'd be considered dirt piles that are piled up along the edge, which is different from the tanks and the buildings that are there now. I think it's a side note here that landscaping, there is no landscaping, as you said, along Southside Avenue, and I think that's gate some of these issues with sound and odors and dust, that maybe they should be pursued for all the businesses along Southside. So just a side note there for views and things that could happen there.
I have nothing else for Mr. Lang.
Okay. Thanks again, Mr. Lang. Ms. Ahouse?
Yes, so our staff report includes our detailed analysis of the project. I'll just summarize our findings today. The staff report finds overall the use is appropriately located, designed, and configured to minimize adverse effects on the surrounding properties. The applicant has provided a flood management plan that's been approved by the Buildings and Inspections Department for the outdoor storage, finding that storage of aggregates is not going to result in adverse effects during flood times. The use and design of the site, even with minimal landscaping, are compatible with the surrounding land uses. They're consistent with the purpose of the RFM zoning district. Overall, this development is promoting manufacturing activity along the river. It frees up land adjacent to the downtown riverfront for expanded recreation and entertainment use. And regarding the specific variances requested, compliance with the required setback to use the conveyor system, which goes right to the property lines, would result in practical difficulties for the operation of the plant at the site. Ineffective and efficient movement of materials. Similarly, conformance with the driveway width would result in practical difficulties for truck traffic coming in and out of the site and could potentially adversely affect traffic on Southside Avenue further if they were limited to that 20-foot width. The setbacks and driveway width are common features which are found in the surrounding industrial development in that area and in that zoning district. So they are a substantial property right that are enjoyed by others in the vicinity. So those are our basic findings. I'm happy to answer any questions on our staff report or our findings.
Thanks, Emily. Okay, I think we'll go back now to Mr. Burke. Mr. Burke, I'll give you an opportunity to respond to anything that's been said by Mr. Lang or Ms. Ahaus. I personally would like to hear a response to the concerns about the dust and the traffic and anything that the applicant has done to try to minimize those impacts.
We are prepared to do that. We'll do that through additional testimony from Mr. Sheehan. May I first ask him a couple of questions about what Ms. Ahaus has had to say?
Sure.
And we'll get to those two issues in some detail. Mr. Sheehan, you heard Ms. Ahaus's comments. The city follows the practice of not having their staff testify under oath, and they are not subject to examination. But you've heard what she has to say. Do you agree that what she said about your proposed project is true and accurate?
Yes, I agree.
And do you adopt her testimony, her comments, as part of your testimony?
Yes, I do.
Then let's go to the two issues that the hearing examiner has asked to talk about. What do you anticipate, based on your experience, the traffic impact of your project will be, and what have you done to determine that?
We have the concrete manufacturing process is obviously contained on the site. The trucks actually deliver the concrete to our customers. It's a couple things that are important to note. The trucks will be exiting and going towards the east on Southside Avenue, where they will go over the railroad tracks at River Road. And then for the most part, those trucks will go to the east unless we happen to have a job somewhere west. But our core market is generally in the urban areas to the east on both sides of the river. And that's where, of course, the major transportation networks are. So most of that ready-mix concrete traffic will be going to the east. The estimates of the volume of activity are approximately a little over 100, on average, a little over 100 truck trips or deliveries per day. So when we have looked at the volume numbers on the OKA website at River Road, just west of State Avenue. And in 2018, those numbers, they were measured and said that there's approximately a little over 30,000 traffic or trips or traffic counts per day going through that site. Now, the latest information was 2018, so I'm sure that number has changed since that time. But with 100 truck deliveries a day, which would be 200 traffic counts, and then factoring in the fact that we'll have approximately 50 employees on any given day at the site, doubling that because they have to come in and go out, that might add another 100. But for the concrete business and our employees, that would put us up to maybe on average 300 traffic counts per day, which is going to be a little bit less than 1% of the overall volume of traffic on River Road. And again, I emphasize, particularly as it relates to Riverside, that traffic will be moving east for the most part, unless we happen to have something along River Road in terms of a project for delivery.
On traffic, last night at the community council meeting, one of the individuals there was specifically concerned because of difficulties created by tractor trailers trying to exit or enter Southside from or to River Road. Does Hilltop operate tractor trailers?
No, the ready-mix trucks themselves are not tractor trailers. They are one-frame trucks. And so therefore, the turning radiuses on the ready-mix trucks are not as large as the turning radiuses or need to be as large as turning radiuses on tractor trailers.
Let's turn to the dust issue. How does Hilltop propose to handle the dust issue? And how does that differ from what's done and what exists at the current plant site?
The handling of the aggregates and the traffic on the site is the greatest source of potential emission of dust. And then also the manufacturing process of the concrete. First and foremost, that concrete plant will be fully enclosed, and the manufacturing of the concrete will take place inside that plant. There are bag houses or dust control mechanisms inside the plant to also absorb the dust that may be created in that process. The horizontal mixing technology that we'll be using will also help to, as a result of less movement of parts, et cetera, help to reduce the amount of dust perhaps created by the manufacturing process. But again, I emphasize that's all inside a fully enclosed plant.
With regard to the plant, Exhibit 5 contained in the application was a PowerPoint presentation that was used at the community council initial presentations. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it has photos of a number of a existing plant that will be similar to what you propose to build. Is that right?
That's correct.
And if the hearing examiner has the opportunity to take a look at that, he'll see that the trucks actually pull in and out of the plant and load entirely in the plant.
Yes, the trucks are loaded inside of the plant, and then actually they go through a rinse station as they move outside the plant, additional rinse station. The other source of potential dust emissions are wherever there are what we call transfer points in the process. One of the biggest differences between this site and our current site is that once we unload the material, the aggregates from the barge, they'll be placed in a hopper and transferred via conveyor directly into stockpile. Currently at our site at the Central Riverfront, we unload material, put it up into a shore-based hopper, and then trucks come underneath that hopper, take the material from that hopper and dump it into the stockpiles. So that process of trucks on the roadway, moving it to stockpile, trucks being loaded from the hopper creates additional emissions points. In this design, those conveyors and the interconnection with the unloading operation will eliminate that potential source of dust. The other thing that we do as part of our best management practices for air quality is we obviously use wet suppression, basically water, at all of those aggregate transfer points throughout. We will have paved roadways in traffic areas that will also help with dust control. And again, we will try to limit as much as possible the drop heights. We talked about the 35 feet stockpile limit, but we do try to limit the amount of drop taking place off of those conveyors. And then just general housekeeping and maintenance as part of our best management is how we will propose to control the dust emissions.
And part of our application is Exhibit 10. Can you describe to the hearing examiner what that is?
Exhibit 10 is the air and water discharge best management practices that we have in place. That also outlines the various permits that we need, both from an air quality, from a water quality, from a river unloading with the Corps of Engineers, and also from a hazardous materials standpoint.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Burke?
Nothing else from us unless you have any additional questions. I'd simply like to state very quickly that the bottom line is, particularly in terms of dust and even transportation, this site will have far less impact, negative impact, than the current site does. And even the current site is a well-managed site. One of the challenges at the current site is that it really is divided up by a series of small city streets, which require much more movement by truck than is going to be necessary on the south side site. We are totally accepting of the conditions proposed by staff, and we sincerely hope that you, as the hearing examiner, will approve the conditional use and the variances and special exceptions recommended by staff. Thank you.
Thanks. I do have one more question about the Ohio EPA permitting. I assume that's a process that some people in the room are familiar with. To what extent are they taking into account some of these dust trapping measures and other hazardous materials that are coming through the plant, if you know?
Do you want to do that, Kevin?
I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. I mean, we
Sure. So you
obviously
obtained a
operate-
permit from the EPA, right?
Yes,
What are they looking at when they're determining whether to issue that permit or not?
Well, I think, what the, Mark, maybe I'll let you go ahead, but they do, the permit will cover both the concrete batch plant, the stockpiling conveyors, the open aggregate stockpiles themselves, and the paved and unpaved roadways. So they do look at all potential sources of dust emissions as part of their permit approval process.
that is correct.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah. All right. I think that's all that I have. Mr. Burke, is that it from you?
That's it from us.
Okay. Great. So I think we'll leave it at that then. I've had a chance to drive through the site, to review all the application materials and the staff report. I am sympathetic to the Riverside and Sedamsville community concerns. However, from a strictly zoning perspective, which is really my scope, I believe this is an appropriate site, an appropriate application. So based on all of those things and the testimony that I've heard today, I am going to approve the application. I frankly, I'm not a scientist. I don't understand on any sort of, I think, significant level the concerns about the dust in particular and any pollutants to the community. And so I have to sort of defer, I think, to the OEPA to make the appropriate recommendations on that. But strictly from a zoning perspective, this does seem like an appropriate use for this particular site. So I need to formalize that decision, and as you know, Mr. Burke, in a written opinion that typically takes about 2 weeks. I will do everything I can to get that out to you as soon as possible. As soon as I finish that decision, I put it into a PDF and I email it to everyone who's in the hearing here today. So Mr. Lang, Mr. Smith, and Mr. Burke, you all have a copy of that decision just moments after it's complete. I will mention that there is a 30-day window for an appeal to the Zoning Board of Appeals, so that is an option if anyone would like to pursue that. Any other questions about any of that right now?
No, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, again, I want to thank everyone for their time and their testimony. If you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out to me, or if you'd like a status update, Mr. Burke, please feel free to reach out to me directly, and I'll let you know where I'm at with the decision. Hope you all have a great day. Good luck with the project. We're glad you can stay in the city, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all.